The company we are looking at is the Peninsula and Oriental Steam Navigation Company, or better known as P&O Cruises. They are a cruise line company which operates underneath the Carnival Cruise Line family. P&O have been cruising around Australia for 90 years and continue to give passengers an experience to remember. The reason that we selected P&O Cruises is that because we knew cruise lines would be heavily affected by COVID-19, and furthermore, we knew they had a very stereotypical consumer, typically an older person or family. With this in mind, we concluded we would be able to analyse how they were targeting the wrong segment of the market and how they could incorporate the younger consumer. P&O Cruises focus its marketing in a variety of ways, a few of them being promotional videos posted to social media sites such as YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. And as well as this, they have promotions on billboards and in travel agents. They focus their marketing on the fact they are family friendly and full of fun activities. In 2021, the cruise line industry was estimated a total of $23.8 billion, which was an 81.8% increase than that of 2020. It may be hard to interpret these values as COVID has affected what the steady cruise market may look like. In this cluster analysis, in which the categorical variable is the age of a person who took the survey, and the continuous variables are the ideal length of travel and the price per 3 nights travel, we can see that in the SPSS output there are two clear classes in age. One of these is the age groups of 18 to 25 and the other being 30 to 50. Using these variables, we were able to compare the means for each categorical variable. In this case, we can see that the younger age group was willing to pay less for a 3-day cruise than older ages. This can be seen as the mean from the younger age group was 5.22, whereas the mean for this variable for the older ages was 7.31. If we then compare the variables for the ideal length of travel, we are able to conclude that consumers aged 30 to 50 are more likely to want a longer cruise, as the mean for this was 4.2 compared to the younger ages, which had a mean of 3.27. As we can see from this output, it is clear that the younger age groups willing to pay less and be on the cruise for a shorter period of time. As this is the case, P&O Cruises should focus on marketing trips that are cheap and a shorter period of time to younger audiences. They should be able to achieve this by continuing to post on social media platforms such as Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, where there is a high volume of younger consumers.
From a survey that was distributed, the investigators would like to evaluate respondents' preference of entertainment options on board cruise ships by determining which choice offered the most importance and value. Therefore, to conduct this analysis, a paired sample t-test will be used, as it will allow researchers to compare the means of two variables. To begin the test, the investigator first analyses consumers' importance of water slides or bars and clubs where the null and alternative hypotheses are stated. He begins by stating the null hypothesis. That is, that there is not a statistically significant mean difference between the mean of the importance of water slides and the mean for bars and clubs on board cruise ships. Additionally, he also states the alternative hypothesis, that is, there is a statistically significant mean difference between the mean for the importance of water slides and mean for bars and clubs on board cruise ships. Step 1 is to check the significance level in the paired samples test table. As the value of 0.00 is lower than 0.05, we reject the null as there is a significant difference between the two means. Step 2. From the paired sample statistic table, the researcher is able to conclude that respondents value bars and clubs more than water slides, as bars and clubs received a higher mean value of 3.55 over 2.52. Next, the researcher does a second paired samples t-test to determine consumers' value of importance of pools and restaurants when selecting cruises to go on, where the null and alternative hypotheses are stated. The null hypothesis is that there is not a statistically significant mean difference between the mean for the importance of pools and mean for restaurants on board cruise ships. Additionally, the alternative hypothesis is that there is a statistically significant mean difference in the mean for the importance of pools and mean for restaurants on board cruise ships. Step 1 is to check the significance level in the paired samples test table. As the value of 0.36 is greater than 0.05, we accept the null as there is no significant difference between the two means. After evaluating the data from the survey, the investigator would like to recommend to Carnival Cruise Lines to increase the amount of restaurants and pools on board their cruises, whilst also reducing the amount of water slides. This is the case as respondents valued these activities as the most important feature when choosing who they cruise with. Furthermore, this recommendation is statistically proven as restaurants and pools receive the largest mean scores of 3.86 and 3.63. By employing these recommendations, Carnival Cruise Lines will be able to appeal to a larger amount of customers whose needs are therefore satisfied. In return, this creates loyal returning customers that will continue to board and recommend Carnival Cruise Line to others.
After conducting our cruise line survey and receiving over 80 responses, we have analysed the data within SPSS and ran multiple tests to understand the perception of cruises and the most likely consumers for cruises. A hypothesis we had prior to the survey was that the older the person is, the more likely they are to travel, as this would match the stigma that only old people would go on cruises. To prove this hypothesis, a one-way analysis of variance was used to see whether a person's age affects their likelihood of travelling within the next 12 months. Before running the one-way ANOVA test, we analysed the responses from the question, do you believe there is a stigma that only older people choose to go on cruises? To the group's astonishment, there was only a 7-vote difference in favour to yes. This astounded us as to prior to the survey, all members of the group agreed that there was a stigma regarding the older people only go on cruises. With this newfound knowledge, the one-way ANOVA test may not reject the null hypothesis, leading to the test of homogeneity of variance having significant value greater than 0.05. Sadly, after running the one-way ANOVA test on age and the likelihood of travel within the next 12 months, the test of homogeneity of variance did indeed have a significant value greater than 0.05. Therefore, any further analysis of this one-way ANOVA would be irrelevant. The group have learnt now that age is not a seen stigma from the sample gathered from the survey, as well as it doesn't affect the likelihood of someone travelling. With this newfound knowledge, we would recommend that P&O Cruises campaign advertisements towards the younger age demographic by informing consumers that they are still operational and they have cruises all year round. The average response from whether a consumer was likely to travel within the next 12 months was 2.94, which was in the undecided category. Therefore, potential sales or discounted cruise trips would be useful for incentivising this on-the-fence crowd for potentially travelling with P&O Cruises sometime within the next 12 months.
The approach I have undertaken is using regression analysis to better understand the effect of two independent variables on the likelihood of attending a cruise in the next 12 months. The two independent variables I've chosen are price sensitivity on a 3-day cruise and age. I chose these variables to see if elderly people will increase the likelihood to go on a cruise in the next 12 months. This will help answer the research question, which is, are the elderly the wrong target market for P&O cruises? To obtain this data, we used these questions that are shown on the screen. A multiple linear regression was used to assess the effect of price sensitivity on a 3-day cruise and age on likeliness to cruise in the next 12 months. The regression model was significant, so it rejected the null hypothesis with a p-value of 0.000. The adjusted coefficient of determination, R-squared, showed that two variables are able to explain 29.3% of the change in likelihood to go on a cruise. Overall, both price sensitivity and age have a small positive significant effect on likeliness to cruise. The regression can then be made into a function which is shown on the screen. We can now input values into this regression function to answer the question. I can now input a high Likert scale of age of 5 and a high Likert scale for price of 10. This will give me 4.543. This value is sitting between somewhat likely and extremely likely, showing there is a relation between the independents and dependent. Meanwhile, if the age is young and the maximum price is low, they are less likely to go on a cruise in the next 12 months. As regression does not show causation, I cannot tell you for sure if one variable causes the other, but only the relationship. With that said, I believe the age-independent variable is showing that elderly are potentially more aware of the cruise industry. This could be because of previous marketing efforts. I also believe that it shows that people who are willing to spend more on a cruise may also have the disposable income to go on cruises. I recommend P&O Cruise Lines create smaller, young adult-friendly cruise lines. They should also invest more money into marketing towards young adults and price-sensitive people. Then retake the surveys with the same regression analysis and see if the results change. In the next few weeks, we will be doing a further test on the correlation between age and how likely people are to cruise in the COVID-19 pandemic. This will tell P&O Cruises if the marketing issue has the COVID-19 pandemic turned away the elderly customers is even an issue in the first place.